Meteorologists have a word they use carefully. They do not use it for ordinary storms or typical cold snaps or the kind of rainy week that disrupts a weekend but disappears by Monday. They use it only when the atmosphere is entering a phase that makes confident forecasting nearly impossible, when the normal rules of weather behavior break down, when the models diverge sharply, and when the potential outcomes on any given day range from relatively calm to genuinely dangerous. That word is volatile. And right now, that is exactly the word being used to describe what is coming. The weather pattern currently setting up across a large portion of the globe is unlike anything seen in recent months. The atmospheric drivers that typically bring orderly, predictable seasonal weather are breaking down simultaneously. The jet stream is weakening in some areas and wildly amplifying in others. Blocking patterns are forming in parts of the upper atmosphere that cause weather systems to stall rather than move, dumping rain for days instead of hours, delivering cold that lingers for weeks instead of days. The temperature contrast between the tropics and the poles, the fundamental engine that drives mid-latitude weather, is fluctuating rapidly and unpredictably. This is not just a rough weather week. This is a pattern shift. And when weather patterns shift in the wrong direction, the consequences ripple outward across agriculture, water supplies, infrastructure, human health, and the economic systems that depend on a climate that behaves, more or less, like it always has. To understand why this matters, you first need to understand what a weather pattern actually is, and how different it is from a weather event. A weather event is a single storm, a flood, a heat wave, a blizzard. It arrives, it peaks, it passes. Damage is assessed. Life returns to normal. A weather pattern is something larger and longer lasting. It is the configuration of the atmosphere at a regional or global scale, the position of the jet stream, the location of high and low pressure systems, the temperature and moisture content of the air, masses competing for dominance over a given region. A weather pattern can persist for weeks or months, and during that time it determines not just one storm, but all of the storms, their frequency, their intensity, their duration, and their path. When a weather pattern becomes volatile, the individual events that occur within it become harder to predict, and often more extreme. A volatile pattern is not simply one bad storm followed by another. It is an atmosphere in a state of active, rapid reorganization, generating weather events at the edges of what has historically been possible in sequences and combinations that can overwhelm the systems we have built to cope with them. That is the pattern that is now building. And the science of how and why weather patterns become volatile is one of the most important stories in modern climatology. The jet stream is the key to understanding almost everything that follows. The jet stream is a fast-moving river of air in the upper atmosphere, typically between 8 and 12 kilometers above the surface, that circles the globe in the mid-latitudes. It flows from west to east, driven by the temperature contrast between cold polar air to the north and warm tropical air to the south. In its undisturbed state, it flows in a relatively straight, fast path, and weather systems below it move along efficiently, bringing reasonable sequences of clear and cloudy, wet and dry. But the jet stream is not always undisturbed. When the temperature contrast between the poles and the tropics is strong, the jet stream runs fast and tight. When that contrast weakens, as it does during certain season-al transitions or during periods of Arctic warming, the jet stream slows and begins to meander. It develops large north-south waves, called Rossby waves, that can amplify into enormous loops that drag cold Arctic air deep into the mid-latitudes on one side and push warm tropical air far into the normally cold north on the other. These large wave patterns are the hallmark of atmospheric volatility. They are associated with blocking events, situations where high-pressure systems become stationary in the upper atmosphere for days or weeks, preventing the normal west to east. Progression of weather. A blocking high over northern Europe, for example, can keep a cold air mass parked over the region for 2 or 3 weeks, turning what would have been a brief cold snap into a prolonged freeze. The same blocking pattern, on its southern side, can force repeated storm systems to track through the same area, delivering rainfall totals that would normally take an entire season to accumulate in just a few days. Right now, the atmospheric pattern is primed for exactly this kind of behavior. The waves in the upper atmosphere are amplifying. Blocking patterns are developing. The jet stream is meandering into configurations that promise not just one extreme event, but a sustained period of atmospheric instability that could last weeks. What makes the current situation particularly concerning is not any single element in isolation. It is the combination of factors that are aligning simultaneously. The first factor is the state of the oceans. Sea surface temperatures across much of the world's ocean basins are running well above their historical averages. Warm ocean water is energy. It evaporates more readily, loading the atmosphere with moisture that fuels precipitation. When that moisture-laden air encounters the boundary between warm and cold air masses that a volatile jet stream creates, the result is storms of exceptional intensity. More moisture means heavier rainfall. More energy means stronger winds. The oceans are, in effect, providing extra fuel to every storm system that develops within a volatile atmospheric pattern. The second factor is the state of the Arctic. The Arctic has been warming at an accelerated rate for decades, and the consequences of that warming extend far beyond the Arctic itself. As the polar regions warm, the temperature contrast that keeps the jet stream tight and fast diminishes. A weaker jet stream is a more volatile jet stream, prone to the large meanders and blocking patterns that produce extreme weather in the mid-latitudes. Research has increasingly linked amplified Arctic warming to the kind of persistent, stuck weather patterns that turn ordinary cold snaps into prolonged deep freezes and ordinary rainfall events into catastrophic flooding. The third factor is the seasonal transition. Some of the most volatile atmospheric periods in any year occur during the transitions between seasons, when summer warmth and winter cold are competing for dominance, when the jet stream is repositioning itself from its summer configuration to its winter configuration, or vice versa. During these transitions, the atmosphere is inherently less stable, more prone to rapid swings, more likely to produce weather that surprises even experienced forecasters. And that is exactly the kind of transition period the current pattern is entering. When warming oceans, an agitated Arctic, and a seasonal atmospheric transition all coincide, as they are coinciding right now, the conditions for an extended volatile weather pattern are in place. Cold was not built to handle. Generation equipment failed. The grid came within minutes of a total collapse that could have left the state dark for months. Over 200 people died. The economic damage exceeded $100 billion. The lesson, that energy infrastructure must be built for the worst possible conditions, not just the typical ones, applies with equal force to a period of volatile weather that could deliver extremes from multiple directions in rapid succession. There is a psychological dimension to volatile weather that rarely makes it into scientific papers, but is deeply felt by the people who live through it. Humans are remarkably adaptable to predictable difficulty. A region that experienced harsh winters year after year develops the culture, infrastructure, and personal resilience to manage them. A region that reliably sees a dry season and a wet season builds its agriculture, its water storage, and its daily routines around that rhythm. Predictability, even when the conditions are demanding, allows adaptation. Volatility removes that predictability, and without predictability, adaptation becomes much harder. When the weather can swing from record warmth to dangerous cold in the space of a week, when rain can be followed by drought, followed by flood in a single season, when no 2 years look alike in ways that past experience can help navigate, the psychological burden on communities is real and significant. Farmers face impossible planning decisions. Emergency managers face budgets and resources that cannot cover every possible contingency. Homeowners face uncertainty about whether their property will flood, freeze, or burn in any given season. Research has documented elevated rates of anxiety, depression, and what some researchers call climate grief in communities that have experienced repeated, unpredictable extreme weather events. The cumulative toll of repeated disruption, of rebuilt lives disrupted again, of recovered farms hit again, of repaired infrastructure damaged again, erodes the social and economic resilience that communities need to bounce back from any single event. The forecasting challenge during a volatile weather pattern is itself worth understanding, because the limitations of forecasting in volatile conditions have direct implications for how prepared communities can realistically be. Modern weather forecasting is remarkable. Numerical weather prediction models, fed by data from thousands of surface stations, weather balloons, aircraft, ocean buoys, and satellites, can produce remarkably accurate forecasts several days into the future. For routine, well-behaved weather patterns, skill extends usefully to about 10 days. But volatile patterns are, almost by definition, difficult to forecast accurately. The large atmospheric waves and blocking patterns that characterize volatility are notoriously hard for models to handle. Small errors in the initial state of the atmosphere can lead to dramatically different forecast outcomes, a phenomenon meteorologists call sensitivity to initial conditions. In practical terms, this means that during volatile periods, the spread between different model solutions is large. The forecast for any given location 10 days out might range from near record warmth to dangerous cold, depending on subtle differences in how the jet stream wave pattern evolves. This does not mean forecasting is useless during volatile periods. Far from it. Probabilistic forecasts, which communicate the range of possible outcomes rather than a single expected outcome, can still provide enormously valuable guidance to emergency managers, agricultural planners, and infrastructure operators. But it does mean that the certainty of a typical week's forecast is replaced by a range of possibilities, some of which are much more dangerous than others. Communicating that uncertainty clearly, without either understating the risk or generating unnecessary alarm, is one of the hardest challenges in operational meteorology. So what does all of this mean for the weeks ahead? And what should individuals, communities, and decision makers be thinking about right now? The first thing it means is that flexibility matters more than usual. When weather patterns are volatile, rigid plans become liabilities. Agricultural operations that can adjust planting or harvesting schedules on short notice, utility grids that can rapidly shift between generation sources, emergency management agencies that have pre-positioned resources for multiple scenarios rather than a single expected event. These are the systems that fare best when the atmosphere refuses to behave predictably. The second thing it means is that monitoring becomes more important. The warning window before any individual extreme event within a volatile pattern is often shorter than in quieter atmospheric periods. Staying connected to reliable weather information sources, not the sensationalized version, but the actual meteorological services and their probabilistic outlooks, allows communities and individuals to make the best possible decisions with whatever lead time is available. The third thing it means is that resilience investments made before the volatile period are worth far more than recovery spending after it. Flood barriers, backup power systems, emergency water storage, cropping, insurance, community warming and cooling centers. These are the investments that reduce the damage any single event can do. And during a volatile pattern, multiple events will occur. The cumulative damage from a series of manageable events is far less than the catastrophic damage from a single overwhelming one. Volatile weather patterns are not new. The atmosphere has always been capable of periods of instability and rapid reorganization. The historical record is full of years when the weather refused to follow the script, when the rains came at the wrong time, when the cold stayed too long, when the heat arrived before anyone was ready. What is new is the context in which today's volatility is occurring. The atmosphere is carrying more energy than it did 50 years ago because a warmer world loads the air and oceans with more heat and moisture. The Arctic is warming far faster than anywhere control the jet stream. Sea surface temperatures are running at record levels, providing exceptional fuel for any storm that develops within a volatile pattern. The result is not simply that volatile periods are more frequent, though there is evidence that they may be. It is that the extremes reached within any volatile period are higher than they would have been in the past. The heat waves are hotter. The cold snaps are colder when the Arctic air breaks through. The rainfall events are heavier. The droughts are drier. The atmosphere is the same restless, complex system it has always been. But it is operating at a higher energy level, and that energy shows up in the intensity of every event it produces. This pattern is about to get very volatile. The warning is clear. The science is unambiguous about what volatile patterns produce and why they are becoming more consequential. What remains is the question of preparation, of whether the individuals, communities, and institutions in the path of what is coming choose to take that warning seriously while there is still time to act on it. The atmosphere does not issue second warnings. It simply delivers what is coming. Pay attention now. The time to prepare is before the pattern breaks.